He's being live streamed. Brilliant. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another live segment, another episode of Did You Know? It feels like a lot of my segments are talking about vaping, and there's a pretty good reason for that. I hear the phrase, oh, vaping is so much safer than cigarettes, way too many times, and I absolutely have to say something about that. The reality is, vaping is just about as dangerous as cigarettes are, but it damages your health in a different kind of way than cigarettes do. To put it as simply as I can possibly put it, cigarettes are essentially burning your lungs, whereas vaping is cooking them. So there's this argument that vaping helps cigarette smokers curb their cigarette addiction by smoking something a little bit less harsh and less intense, but there's very little evidence that this even works. In fact, some folks will even make the mistake of smoking or vaping and then follow that with a cigarette anyway. And the amount of nicotine that they consume ends up being so toxic that they feel nauseous and they feel like their heart's about to beat out of their chest. And this is really assuming that they're lucky enough to avoid the impending heart attack that could result from this. So vaping doesn't really help with quitting cigarettes. Why are they so popular then? And who's buying them? So before we talk about that, first let's talk about how vapes work. Your standard vapor e-cigarette operates in roughly the same way. A nicotine-based e-liquid, or in some cases a marijuana-based e-liquid, depending on your preference, gets heated up by a coil until it's aerosolized. This aerosol is then inhaled through your mouth and into your lungs, and it's picked up by your cells and dispersed throughout your entire body into your brain. Any remaining aerosol that you didn't absorb by or wasn't absorbed by your lungs gets exhaled, and that's what creates that distinct cloud of vapor. But what about the aerosol that was absorbed? To put it simply, this aerosol is so much worse than the e-liquid it was before. Before being vaporized, the e-liquid typically consists of flavorings, including diacetyl, which we'll talk about in a second, and some glycerol or propylene glycol base, and nicotine, one of the most addictive chemicals available legally. Some people choose to replace that nicotine with THC if the vape they're using adapts to a marijuana cartridge, but that also makes it pretty addictive, and you still experience the unhealthy, damaging effects that vaporizing chemicals can create. Why is this all so unhealthy? So if you've ever taken a chemistry class, you may remember that cooking or igniting something can create a chemical byproduct. This chemical burning takes the unhealthy or kind of like the mildly unhealthy chemicals that we talked about before and makes them very unhealthy. When they react with the heat, they create a bunch of carcinogenic and inflammatory compounds, ultrafine particles and metals from the device itself, and flavor byproducts, some of which are known to cause serious lung diseases. That diacetyl that I just talked about, this is usually used to flavor microwavable popcorn, and it's been known to cause a disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, or popcorn lung. This is basically when the flavorings burn and scar the alveoli in your lungs that absorb oxygen, and this causes a lot of breathing problems and excessive coughing. And unfortunately, the scarring is permanent, and over time, it can become life-threatening. These flavorings are especially problematic because they are the main element that appeal to the younger generation. But they're so bad when that chemical reaction happens because they create a plethora of lung problems and inflammation, whole body inflammation, impaired heart and adrenal function from the nicotine, and some level of neurotoxicity. And let's not forget addiction. I actually highlighted addiction because even though it might not seem like the worst thing on this list, it becomes a problem because so many people who experience these health injuries can't stop vaping or smoking. By that time, it's already way too late, and the addiction at this point makes it monumentally difficult to quit. Also, it's pretty important to note that the human brain continues to develop up until the age of 25, and so introducing any addictive substance to this system, like nicotine, is going to affect development and potentially create a lifelong addiction. Statistically, a majority of teens who vape at a younger age usually will transition to regular cigarettes or other substances later on. Also, most of the substances you find in e-cigarette vapor can increase your risk of cancer significantly. Remember, we said they are carcinogens. And accidentally exposing your skin to e-liquid can cause acute nicotine poisoning, since nicotine can actually be absorbed by your skin. Vapes can also be physically defective, and some people will report explosions or burns while charging their e-cigarettes due to defective batteries, as these devices are usually cheaply made. And lastly, it's very, very important to keep in mind that vaping during pregnancy is just as dangerous as smoking during pregnancy, and that can harm your developing fetus. Now, let's answer our earlier question, which is why are vapes so popular and who is buying them? The answer may not surprise you. It's teens, really young teens, and that's not by accident. You see, vapes come in many different colors with many different flavors like cotton candy and gummy bear. And this can be really appealing to a younger person or pretty much anybody who likes sweets. And with over 15,000 flavors to choose from, it's really not surprising that over 730,000 middle and high school students vape every day. Also, no surprise that 83% of them prefer the flavored stuff. Luckily, the Food and Drug Administration eventually caught on, and in January of 2020, they issued a ban on flavored pod and cartridge-based products, specifically any vape products that were designed to appeal to minors or any vape products that were marketed towards minors. So this ban was not at all perfect. It still allowed the sale of menthol and tobacco-flavored e-cigarettes, and it still allowed the sale of fruity, minty, and dessert-flavored disposable e-cigarettes. That's right, disposable vapes were not affected by the ban since they technically don't require a pod or a cartridge. There's some speculation that the FDA left this loophole in order to appease adults who may be using e-cigarettes to quit smoking regular cigarettes. And like we talked about before, there's very little evidence that this actually works. And so a sizable number of vape companies took advantage of this loophole by developing pre-charged, pre-filled, and disposable e-cigarettes. A lot of these actually contain more nicotine than a pack of cigarettes. So after a little Google search for disposable vapes, I posted this screenshot just so I can show you kind of what these products look like. And as you can see, they are very colorful. Now, I remember in middle school when somebody would gift me a colorful pack of markers, I would lose my mind. And I'm not really surprised that middle schoolers are drawn to this stuff. I actually think this is why there's a youth vaping epidemic to begin with. Colorful, candy-flavored vapor pens being advertised as harmless. But people wouldn't be developing addictions, they wouldn't be developing lung problems, and they wouldn't be ending up in intensive care units if these products were actually harmless. Excuse me. So is anything being done to fix this? Well, we got to take some baby steps. Since August 26, 295 manufacturers have had to pull over 1 million products from retail stores, thanks to efforts by the FDA. Please excuse me, allergies. And so, since this ban specifically targeted flavored tobacco-based nicotine products, these companies are now working on developing synthetic nicotine. Now, I know a thing or two about chemistry, and that's enough for me to tell you that synthetic nicotine will be a very bad idea. And so now you might be asking yourself what you, as a concerned parent or citizen, can do about this. And so I encourage you to advocate for stricter laws on selling vape products and tobacco products. And I encourage you to advocate for stricter enforcement of these policies and making sure that smoke shops and gas stations in your community are properly IDing people before selling these products, and making sure that they're not selling illegal or banned flavored products. Lastly, I would recommend talking to your child or loved one. Younger teens are dealing with an unprecedented amount of stress, and so it's important to be compassionate and understanding as you listen to them. On Wednesday, Omnia, one of our team members, posted a behind the vapor nurturing parenting session that gets more in depth about how you can create a dialogue with your children. And you can find that video on our videos page on Facebook. It's very important that we, as a community, have an open conversation with our youth about the products being marketed to them. Products that could easily harm their development and negatively impact their life. The Dearborn community has many great coalitions and organizations doing incredible things, including our very own ACT Drug-Free Community Coalition. So whether you're a concerned parent or community member or a younger person who wants to make the world a better place, working with these coalitions can make a huge difference in the way we address substance use, mental illness, and addiction in our community. To conclude, I've left some resources for you to hold on to, and I will leave this information in the description of this video. If you have any questions, any comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave a comment on this video or to email us at info@lahc.org or give us a call at 888-315-5242. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have an incredible weekend. Take care.